Wow. Hello, South by Southwest, and then I know there's streaming, so hello, Internet. I'm really excited to be here. My first time here, as Hugh said, was in 2006. And I was making web pages for artist friends. I was taking pictures and obsessively uploading them to Flickr. I was shooting videos and putting them up on the archive.org before YouTube. And I made all these friends on the internet. And then I knew them pretty well just because we would share so much of our lives. And then I came to South by Southwest and started drinking with them. And started having dinners with them. Started coming up with things beyond the walls of the conference that were fun. So if this is your first time to South by Southwest, welcome, and you're in for a great ride and some good food. Okay, so let's go right into this. So I've got a bunch of stuff to tell you about. First of all, I'm wearing a jacket from Truly Wrecked. It's basically, I love this guy, and he makes these things that use old materials, felt and wood, but new digital design tools like Makerbots and laser cutters. And he goes through prototypes and prototypes until they're ready for his store. I got started with making stuff when this is me at about 7, and that's my little brother on the big wheel. And I got started because I started working on bikes. I worked with an uncle, and he brought me along with him on the trash routes at about 4 a.m. to go pick up all the good trash, which we'd fix up and then sell on the weekends at junk meetups. And we put together a bike, and I got hooked on this feeling that you get when you fix something. If you fix something or you've made something, you know it's like it's a real rush. It feels really good. You want more of it. And so later on in my life, I gathered a group of people, and we founded NYC Resistor, a hacker collective in Brooklyn. And the idea was basically get a bunch of people together who are the smartest people in New York and share a clubhouse with all the tools we could ever want to make anything. And beyond the tools, though, we also had each other as friends and the experience of each other to make anything. And that combination of friendship and tools, led us to feel like we can make anything. And so what did we make? We made a machine that can make anything. And if you haven't heard of it, a Makerbot is a machine that's a 3D printer. And it works by drawing a picture and then lifting up a little bit, drawing another picture in molten plastic. And when it's done enough layers, your digital design has turned into a physical design. And what I'm excited about is the next industrial revolution, where in the same way that if you go back in time and you think about like the way that Photoshop changed the way that photography worked, or you think about the way that computers changed the way that we think about everything, or any number of innovative milestones, for us, Makerbot is all about empowering people to make stuff. And we're dedicated to supporting creative explorers to make wonderful things. And I already mentioned this stuff. So basically, we're messing with stuff. We're making it affordable. We're making it so you can make stuff faster. When we started Makerbot, before Makerbot actually, we wanted a 3D printer, but we couldn't afford one. They were mainframe-sized machines, and they were like 100 grand. And we couldn't afford one, so we had to make one. And when it worked, we quit our jobs and started Makerbot. And when you stack up the build volume, the resolution, and the cost, it's just like, it's an awesome thing to get. We also started, actually before we started Makerbot, we started a site called Thingiverse. Thingiverse is a universe of things. It's the place to download digital designs and share them. And it's going through an amazing, there's a renaissance going on right now. It's never been easier to make and share actual designs. That's going to be one of the themes you hear me talk about a bunch, is creativity is now much more accessible in the thing world. In the same way that Dreamweaver 2004 unlocked websites for a lot of people, Makerbot is unlocking the ability to make physical things. And we just launched something on Thingiverse called the Customizer, and this lets you, if you have a Nokia Lumia phone, or we have another one for the iPhone, you choose your phone, and then you choose what design you want, and you can customize it. And you can make a customized back for your phone. So this is another way that we're trying to make it accessible and fun and playful to get people over that hump into becoming makers and becoming creative explorers. My favorite thing on Thingiverse. This is, for those of you with kids, this is genius. This is a connector from Brio tracks to Duplo blocks. Neither of these companies would make this because they're separate things. But with a Makerbot, you can combine them and make something special. Professionals use this like mad. Our biggest customer I love is NASA, which just, the nerd in me is just like, yes. Yes, that's so great. And it lets people make things faster and cheaper, and even people who already have 3D printers will often get a Makerbot and prototype their prototypes before they run it on their expensive prototype machine. And this slide is actually about a week old. Since about a week ago now, there's 7 of the top 10 architecture firms in the US use Makerbots. We've got a product that's launching today. The Level Up is, you'll see this around town, super cool. They prototyped this and saved tons of money making it on their Makerbot instead of outsourcing that process. JPL, I mentioned. For the Curiosity rover, they had a piece on the Curiosity rover that they had to get prototyped. It cost them $5,000 to send it out. When they had to make another one, they bought a Makerbot. Ford uses them, and they create. It's neat. When you have them, it's sort of like, we grow up all as consumers, and when we want something, we think about what the choices we have to make. Which one am I going to buy? Which one is the best one? And you have to choose between things that where somebody has justified making it. And so they've probably had to make like 10,000 or 100,000 of them, and then you have to pick between like which thing made in the hundreds of thousands do you pick. When you have a Makerbot, you just get to make the thing you want. These folks are awesome. This is Thomas Lipoma and his company. They make sleep apnea devices for babies so that you can check whether or not your baby is breathing on your cell phone. The RoboHand project. This is a project being led by 2 guys. One of them is in Seattle and the other one is in South Africa. And they collaborate using their Makerbot like a 3D fax machine. And there's a boy in South Africa who was born without a hand. And he has a little bit of a wrist, but his fingers just didn't make it. And these 2 guys are making him prosthetic hands. And this is kind of a big deal because kids usually don't get prosthetics because it can cost up to $10,000 just for a finger, and they're growing. So you'd have to buy one next month, or if you've ever had to buy shoes for kids, you know how this goes. And now he's got 2 hands, and they've got prototypes. This is they're a couple prototypes in, and they just made a second one for a little girl, and now they've got a line of people who are ready to, and they're just cranking out hands for kids. Yeah, that's cool. The Square Helper is another thing that's a Makerbot entrepreneur project. This guy, Chris, has a band, and he's the merchandising guy. And so he uses Square to sell T-shirts and CDs and all sorts of stuff. And he found that it would twist around a little bit. So he made the Square Helper. And he had to make a choice. He did the research and found out to make it the old-fashioned way where you get tooling, 2 big pieces of metal, and they come together and plastic gets injected into them and they go. It would cost $6,000 to make those 2 big pieces of metal, and then about 25 cents a pop to make the little thing. Well, instead, he bought a Makerbot and cranks them out on his Makerbot 20 hours a day. And when he maxes out that, he'll just get another Makerbot. And when Apple comes out with a new iPod or a new iPhone or a new iPad, he can just change the digital design in a minute and be back in business instead of taking 3 months and a lot of money. Oh, I love talking about people who do cool stuff. Casey Hallgren is super, super awesome. She's a set designer in New York City, and her sets are on Broadway. And she used to have to make things with glue and cardboard and an X-Acto knife. And now she does her designs digitally, and she's not cutting her fingers anymore. She runs her Makerbots overnight, and comes in and gets to talk to the director about what choices they're going to make about the set. And they're beautiful. And she does this for her job, but then she makes all these designs, so she started a second gig with a website called PrettySmallThings.com selling dollhouse furniture. Cosmo, artist out of LA, and he likes going and using Autodesk 123D Catch to capture artistic sculptures. And this is a really old horse from the British Museum. And he scanned it and then made a life-size copy. With the Makerbot, you can really only make things that are about shoebox size, but he used 29 shoebox-sized parts to make this life-size horse head. So it kind of gets you the idea that if you want to do something, like don't be held back by limitations, you can always find a way around it. We make Makerbots in Brooklyn, and we're really proud of that. And yeah, it's awesome. The only way we could get products out so fast is because we've got our engineers around the corner from the folks who are putting it together and assembling it. And so when something goes wrong, we can know right away and fix it. Or when we want to make something better, we just make the change right there. There's a lot of reasons that this is better than going overseas. Part of it is fuel costs are going up, labor costs are going up, and there's a whole emerging market in Asia, so it's harder to actually get stuff done. Having it done in Brooklyn, we know that every Makerbot that comes out is made with Brooklyn pride, and that means that all the holes are lined up and it works. So that's awesome. So we're starting to see 3D printers show up Makerbots in schools. And I spent 7 years as a school teacher in Seattle Public Schools. So this is close to my heart, and it's super awesome to see kids, when they use a Makerbot, they get an education in manufacturing that usually you would have to go to college for. And basically, we have kids come up to us when we're out in the world and they're like, "Can you make Lego?" And we're like, "Yes." And they're like, "Just get out of my way." I think back, like, when I was a kid, I loved to put stuff together and take stuff apart and make new things, sculptures and contraptions. And I think back, like, what if when I was 10, I had had a Makerbot? And then I think, like, how much I would have learned from that and how my life would have been different. And I think, okay, we got to get these in kids' hands so that they have the tools to change the future. Natural history museums use them. This is an elephant foot. More teacher stuff. This is a playset by Thingiverse superstar Emmett. And Emmett is just a really prolific designer, and he shares his stuff. And this is a playset where you print out, there's 4 different components, and here they're represented by 4 different colors, and you can basically build your own DNA chain. This is a girl that's happy because she is 41.5 inches tall, and they just got back from an amusement park. When you're a Makerbot dad, you can solve problems and be a hero. He made 2 orthotics that slipped into her shoes that made her tall enough to ride on all the rides. Yeah. The new hobbyist made this. He has an espresso maker, and it broke. And there's no parts for it. You can't buy parts for these things. All he could do is throw it away and buy another one. But instead, he used his Makerbot to make it so it worked again and restored balance to the caffeinated world. M. Messiter is a musician who uses this type of piano that plucks. I think it's called a harpsichord. He made a little stand for his iPhone so he could, tune things. And then there's all these things underneath the iPhone that are all white. Those would have been ultra expensive to have made by somebody else and installed. And he just made them on his Makerbot, cranked them out, and he's back making music. Some people just get them to play with their kids, and it's such a fun process. It's kind of a kitten watching a goldfish bowl kind of experience seeing a Makerbot. And yeah, so going back in time, in 2009, I showed up. We actually started the company in January of 2009, And we basically didn't sleep. We literally drank just tons of caffeine, energy drinks, and literally a box of ramen. Like, don't do that. And at about 8 a.m., our prototype worked, and I jumped on a flight at 10 a.m. to come to South by Southwest. And I basically went to bars and put the Makerbot on the bar and started printing shot glasses, which turned out to be pretty popular. They were pretty rough. This was an early prototype, but the idea was it worked, and we were ready to go. And this is like thimble-sized, by the way. This is like just the beginning. And took it around. Oh, you know what? Let me just fix this here. There we go. Oh, missing the top of that picture. Drat. That's a musician that I really like. OK. Let's try that. OK. I basically took it and opened for shows with the Makerbot back in the day and made little dodecahedrons and little teeny tiny shot glasses. And it was one of those things where we came here with a prototype knowing that it worked. We went home. We iterated a couple more times in the next like 2 or 3 weeks till we were happy with it. And then we put together 20 kits. And we thought, OK, this is going to be great. We're going to have 20 of these things. We're going to sell 10 this month, and we'll put 10 on the shelf. And in 2 months, that'll give us enough time to make another 20, and this will be fun. And then we sold out instantly, sort of like Kickstarter style of like things going, and then all of a sudden you're wonderfully screwed. It was really fun, and it was one of those things where being here and showing the people here, we basically figured out like if the internet likes this, we're going to be OK. And that's where we were. And this idea of, and this is kind of the Makerbot way of, we encourage iteration. We make the material, which is made from corn, so it's a natural bioplastic. We make it affordable so people can make stuff, and then when they want to make another one, they don't have to stress out about how much it costs. Or if somebody wants one, you can just give it to them, and then you can just make more because you have the machine. We're here today, and I get to do it all again. We've got a new thing that's under this thing, and we get to ramp it up. We were bringing it here to show you first, to see if South by Southwest and the greater internet likes it. And well, here we go. It's the Makerbot Digitizer. And keep in mind that this is a prototype. Can I have like a drum roll? Oh, great. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. So this is the Makerbot Digitizer. And on it is a garden gnome. And the way this works is, mostly when people design things, they have to use CAD, computer-aided design. And this can be really hard. And we're actually doing a lot of things to make it easier. But one of the things that you can do is you'll be able to get this, you'll be able to order this in fall. And it will not look like this because this is a prototype. But what you do is you take something that you want to copy, and you put it on here, and you can make things about 8 inches in diameter, a column up to about 8 inches tall. And there's, I'll turn it on. There's 2 lasers, and a webcam and a bunch of electronics that basically what's happening here is the lasers are shining here, and the webcam is seeing where the line is. And wherever the line is, it creates points, and then it wraps it all up into a 3D model. So to kind of show you what it looks like, got a little video to show you what it looks like on the computer. There it is. It's turning around. And then as it's turning, it's actually bringing the thing into the digital world. If you've seen Tron, this is kind of like what happens when Flynn gets digitized into the game grid. And then it makes it into a 3D model. So then you can make as many copies as you need. You can fill the world with garden gnomes if you want, because you've got the power of replication. In many ways, this goes hand in hand with the Makerbot replicator too. You can scan and create the designs really simply with this, and then you can make as many as you want on a replicator. This is kind of like the washer-dryer combo of replication. Couple things about it. One is this changes our company from just being a 3D printer company to a company that's building out a 3D ecosystem. So that, and we really want to find more ways that folks can jump in and take that first step into being creative and get hooked and feel that rush. And so we've been working on this for a while. In theory, we probably could have waited until it was done and launched it that way. But we couldn't wait. We wanted to show you this and launch it here. And I'm excited. You're going to be able to get it this fall. Yeah. So a couple things, kind of details here. You can see some of the details on the screen. And then basically one of the cool things is that in the past, so this technology, similar to 3D printing, has been around for 25 years, maybe more. But it's been hard. Usually it involves like, in the past it's involved lasers and cameras, and then it usually involves lots of post-processing, like 4 or 5 hours or a lot of time going and cleaning everything up. If there's a piece of dust here, it'll find that little piece of dust and it'll register it as part of the thing, which messes things up. So I'm really excited about this. And I'm really excited about this. So I mentioned the Tron thing. And I guess what I'm curious about is, so we've just got a garden gnome here. We chose this because it's the right size, it's playful. And I'm just curious if you had one of these, what you would digitize, what you would, I think about, when I was younger, I had a collection of, every plastic dinosaur ever made. And I gave those away when I grew up, but I wish I could go back and have all those as 3D models so I could share them with my daughter. I think that, just think about things, if you put your Makerbot goggles on and you think about, okay, if it's smaller than this, I can replicate it. And then you start going out into the world and you're like, okay, this, I can replicate this. I don't know why you would, but you could. And the whole idea here is that it's easy, it's friendly, and it's another pathway into the 3D world where you can make things and it's not hard. So I just have to I'd love to get a round of applause for my team that sweated really hard to get this here today. So my next announcement is that Makerbot, we just teamed up with Autodesk, and Autodesk makes AutoCAD, but they also have come out with all these insanely cool applications that are friendly, the 123D series of applications. And my favorite one is this one that lets you make creatures. It's called 123D Creature. And you can download it for your iPad, and then you can make really creepy or friendly or wonderful or absurd characters, whether you want to make it look like a gorilla or you want to make it look like a 12-legged insect attack from Mars. And we're going to be over in their booth, and you can come check it out and see all the good stuff we're doing with them. So I've kind of already said this. I'm trying to basically, it's not just that I want you to buy things. I actually want you to be creative. I want you to feel that rush when you make something and it's yours and you're in control of it and you can do really cool things with it. And it's really fun. And so I do actually encourage you to join us and help change the future. And I think one of the cool things about this, and I'll just end here, is that we're launching hardware at South by Southwest, where usually, for the last like 6 or 7 years, we've seen lots of social media stuff launch. It is the best time to get into hardware. Get a Makerbot, get into electronics. Electronics have become a lot more friendly, and join the next industrial revolution. Be empowered. Join us. Thank you. So now we're going to take questions, and we've got questions from the Twitterverse. And if you tweet out something with Ask Pettis, we'll see it, I believe.
Yep.
And
so
this is Steve Garfield, by the way. Give him a round of applause. Old friend.
Thank you, Bre. So my name's Steve Garfield. We actually met 2006, and I remember the times of we both were learning video blogging at the same time.
Yeah.
And we did become friends online, and then when we met at South by, like a lot of you were meeting each other here for the first time, when we first met, we had that experience of like, wow, I feel like I already know you, and that was really cool. So I've been friends for a while, and as a disclosure, I'd like to say that when we first met, I was so, Bre is so exciting. I said, if you ever do something that I can invest in, let me know. And I am an investor in Makerbot, so let's get that out of the way. So we asked people to tweet to ask a question. So anybody can ask a question, so it's not having to run up to the microphone. I think that's a pretty cool thing they're trying this year.
Yeah.
So the first question is, how much is a Makerbot?
It's $2,200. So that machine is optimized to use PLA, which is really where you want to start. That machine is awesome, very high resolution, 410 cubic inch build volume, and it comes in any color as long as you like black.
The Makerbot. Any color as long as it's black. And for the ingredients or the plastic is black. Is it black color?
You can get black. We have like 30 different colors, and so you can make things. And we even, we're kind of playful. So we're like, what if we got some stuff that would make it glow under a black light? And we're like, well, let's try it, and it works. So we've got all sorts of colors and glow in the dark, and
cool.
We just try things out.
Bring up the next question. And let's see, let's roll the dice back there. And the next question is from Whitney Drake, and it's, where do you think 3D printing will have the biggest impact? It makes a huge impact on companies that do design, NASA and architecture firms. But I think the story I told of the two guys who are making prosthetics for kids, that doesn't get much better. So I think in the world of forces of good, like using a maker, where do you think it'll have the biggest impact? I guess my answer is, as a force of goodness in the world. And in that example, the architects and NASA are using it for prototypes, but in that example, they're using it for the actual end product. Yeah, that's really cool. And bring up the next question. Go ahead.
When they're done, when they make it, when the kid grows, they can just scale up the model and reprint it.
That's awesome. Next question. Let's see. Roll the dice, and here it is. Chris Folan. Did you print your own jacket? This cool jacket.
This jacket is great. No, this is a laser cut jacket, and it's felt and wood, and it's just so cool. It's also really warm. But this comes out of it. This is an Icelandic designer, and it's just. I saw this and I talked to him, and I was like, "Can I please wear that?" And it's just. It kind of looks like an STL file, which is the kind of file format that a Makerbot takes.
It is kind of crazy.
Because it's made out of triangles. Yeah.
And also we saw recently on the news that there was a dress made from a 3D printer, right?
Oh, yeah. Fashion is one of those things that's coming along where people are when you have new tools, at some point painting was new, right? At some point somebody was like, I'm going to take paint and I'm going to figure out how to make a picture. And now we have a new medium with 3D printing where artists are discovering it and they're doing wonderful things. So artists that do data visualizations are making amazing data visualization things. And I think we're going to see lots of more interesting stuff happen in fashion.
Let's bring up the next question, and while we do, I have an art gallery. I'm from Boston, and I get emails from them, and I got a recent email and it said, come in and see these Makerbot produced art, and they have sculptures and lamps made by a Makerbot in the art gallery right down my street. It's amazing. So next question, Renee Herzer. Can we print everything in the future?
I love the future is it's so deep. I think I can say yes eventually. I think right now there are limitations now where you're limited to plastic, and we did some tests early on 3D printing with chocolate, and we're still recovering from the great jelly explosion of 2009. But there's all sorts of possibilities for silicone, and material science is something we're working on, so we can start exploring the frontier of what you can make.
I've seen in the news 3D printing of meat or food, right. and a guy is 3D printing a three-wheeled car. So I think if it's a physical object,
bring it on.
There's 3D printing of a house, right,
yep.
with a huge 3D printer?
Yeah. I mean, my personal goal is to get a Makerbot on the moon, to build the moon base so I can vacation there.
Nice. Let's bring up the next question. And they're working their magic. Corey Wilkerson, can I 3D print a Makerbot from a Makerbot?
Yes, you can. In fact, there's a whole project dedicated to that called the RepRap project. Super cool project focused on self-replication. And we had a day, maybe 2 years ago, where somebody used a Makerbot to make most of the pieces of another Makerbot. And we knew that it had been possible, but that somebody actually did it in the community and not us was just super cool.
That's awesome. Let's bring up the next. And Chris Lloyd says, what is the biggest hurdle to mainstream adoption of 3D printers, price or ease of use? Both is not an option.
It really depends on who you are, because if you're wealthy, price is not an issue. Or if you have, $2,200 means you're committing to something for sure. And I will say, like, when we first started, those first 20 machines we shipped out, they shipped with electronics that was like an electronics board, and we shipped tweezers and one of these things that you put over your head that have magnifying glasses and a syringe of solder, and then you had to put it in a toaster oven. And those people are like, when people complain, they're like, I had to surface mount solder my own, stuff and go back and forth to school in the snow. So it kind of is relative depending on what your issue is, but it's affordable. It's way more affordable than it has ever been, and it's a great time to be a creative explorer and see what's going to happen next.
Cool. Bring up the next question. And while that's coming up, the Digitizer is going to make it easier to use, obviously.
Yeah.
So when people get the Digitizer and they put something in here and they turn it on and scan it, then how do they get that scanned in thing over into a Makerbot?
So good question. So this is just on auto mode, so I can show off the lasers. This turns around in less than 3 minutes. It makes the scan, and then there's a USB thing here that connects to your computer, so you can literally, it'll just send it over the USB. And there's host software that poops it out.
Right. So you take the USB, take it out, stick it into the Makerbot, and then how do you print?
So then you take your 3D model and you bring it into our software called Makerware, and that lets you scale it bigger and smaller. And then you press print, and it slices it up and sends it to the machine, and next thing you know, you're replicating things.
Wow. All right, next question, Kazumi Terada. Digital printers and ebooks transform printing and publishing. How will 3D printing transform mass manufacturing?
So it's interesting. One of the big things is it just gets access to people. Most people don't think like, oh, I want to make this thing. When they think I want to make this thing, they might think like, well, I'm not a tycoon. I don't have my own factory. I can't do it. But when you have a Makerbot, you just route right around that feeling, and you just jump in and you do it. And a lot of people, one of my favorite things is when people get them and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to get one and see what happens. Because they're not afraid to do really wacky and wonderful and absurd things. And the wacky and wonderful and absurd is really close to innovation, being able to push the limits of what's possible. So I think the biggest thing is that just more people are going to get access to the manufacturing process.
So actually, it reminds me of the question I asked about bringing the design from here with the USB, taking it out and sticking it in the Makerbot.
Yeah.
If people did not have the Digitizer and they had a Makerbot, they can go online to the, what do you call it?
Thingiverse.
Thingiverse, yeah. And there's a design that people have made, and is that free for them to pull down the design and make it?
So there's like 40,000 things today that you can make that are on Thingiverse that are all free. And you can, if you digitize something, you could share it there and make it 40,001. And so even if you don't have a digitizer and you want to get a Makerbot, but you don't know CAD, jump in, you'll be making things, you'll get inspired, and next thing you know, you'll be a digital designer.
Wow, very cool. Next question is Mike Olson. From a small donated booth at CES to opening remarks at South by Southwest, any advice for young entrepreneurs?
I think one of the tricks you have to go through as an entrepreneur is you have to believe that it's possible. And so one of the reasons Makerbot worked is because we didn't know how hard it was going to be. So I think in some ways, the best advice I would have for an entrepreneur is to just get started and throw yourself into it, because if you have an idea and you throw yourself into it and it doesn't work, all that energy you put in is still momentum that you bring to your next project. And that momentum, if you do that, you're just eventually going to succeed. And that's sort of that's the Makerbot way. You try again, and until you're happy with the outcome.
From those initial the first Makerbots that you made, and then you started selling them really fast, when did you say, okay, this is going to be a company, and then when did it turn into getting investment and becoming, a company in Brooklyn with manufacturing? Like, how did that progression happen?
One foot in front of the other. We, when we started NYC Resistor, it was just natural that we work on a 3D printer project. For whatever reason, we were just like, we want one. Let's see if we can make one. And from there, when it eventually worked, it was just a natural progression to get a checking account. And from there, you have a business. You can start selling things.
Okay, next question. Let's run the computer in the back, and Master Relevance is doing a good job with this. Maker Stash, what's been the biggest key to the success of Makerbot?
We have this great community, and they give us great feedback. And oftentimes, with hardware, it takes time to make adjustments. But when we need to improve something, our community lets us know right away. And then we double down, stick our nose to the grindstone, and make it happen. And then I think in many ways, we're inspired by our users. People are using Makerbots to do wonderful things. So we just have to keep making it better so more wonderful things can happen.
So did the users ask for a digitizer? And we'll bring up the next question while he answers that.
It's been out, there's been DIY kits like this for a while. And the hardware is actually pretty standard. You've got a turntable, you've got lasers and a webcam and some electronics, but the software is really hard. So we've had people for a long time be like, why don't you just have a scanner? And I went out there and looked at all of them, and they were all super expensive. And I thought, okay, maybe we can do this. We tried it out, and it didn't work, and then we tried it again, didn't work, tried it out, and then we were like, okay, this almost works. Let's throw some energy at it. And there you go. Now it's a real thing out in the world that we're doing.
So you say this is in demo mode as it's turning around here?
That's right.
In real mode, do you need a computer hooked up to this, or does it just, is it self-sufficient here? Yeah,
you hook up a computer to it, and you run software here that goes through here, and that all connects to make it so that it scans your thing.
Like when you do scanning of documents, it's
right,
like
you
hooking up a scanner.
Exactly. That's a 2D scanner. Now we have to think about scanner. You can't just say scanner anymore. You have to be like 3D or 2D scanner.
That's cool. Jason asks, ready to start building. What are your recommendations on software?
So I would go download the iPad app 123D Creature and start just playing with that. It's fun because it's playful and you can just enjoy it. From there, you're gonna learn a bunch of stuff out of that, and then you can move on up. And there's a whole just suite of 123D stuff you can use that will get you started. And then if you get really hooked and you want to do some serious engineering, you can go all the way up to AutoCAD and some of those really powerful tools.
So the 123, what is it on the iPad?
123D Creature. So
can I design things? It's designing without the CAD software? Is it like a drawing? What's that like?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's the Creature application sets you up with sort of a blank body, which actually looks pretty creepy. And then you have to draw, you extend the arms, you pose them, and then you actually bake it. And then you can manipulate it and add hair and eyes and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of like when you were a kid, if you ever had one of those mix and match a monster books, you can go in and make amazing creatures.
So the end result of that now without the Makerbot is
you have a cool model.
You have a cool model.
Like a virtual model.
And then how does that interface with the Makerbot if you got the two?
So from the iPad app, you actually send yourself the file. So you email the file to yourself. And then you drag that into Makerware, and next thing you know, you're making creatures. And I'm waiting for somebody to do this and then make a bunch of creatures, and they're going to kind of Muybridge style make a bunch of creatures in different poses and do animation.
Right.
That's coming.
That sounds cool. Next question is Ginger Pels. Could I replicate eyeglass frames or shoes?
Yes.
All right, putting up the next question.
It's one of those things where, eyeglass frames are a little bit tricky because they're pretty thin, and you'd have to try a couple times to get it right. But people have done it, and there's a couple designs on Thingiverse you can download.
That reminds me of actually a couple of the slides that you put up there. You showed the Nokia phone case. Now, what I just read about that, I happened to just read about that, and what's interesting is that Nokia open sourced the design of the case, which allowed you to put it up there for people to then make their own cases, right?
It's interesting because they published the design files that they use for injection molding, and the back was really thin. And so we just downloaded that design, made some changes so it would work on a Makerbot, and reshared it. So this iteration process is, I know I keep talking about it, but it's really part of how next generation of design is going to work. You're going to be able to just try things and get there one way or another. It's kind of like agile software. You want to iterate as quickly as possible. You want to publish as often as possible so that you're pushing towards the next thing.
So the companies with what are normally proprietary designs, they have to be forward-thinking to say, hey, let's share this part of it, and it's actually going to help them. And what about Ford? You showed a picture of an engine.
Yeah.
What is that?
So Ford is one of these companies is a really innovative company, and they uploaded a couple car models that are like models that you can print out as like toys, and then they took the design file of an engine block, a V6, and uploaded that. And one of the cool things about that is engine blocks are not something you can, if you're a gearhead, you can take things apart and you can see how it all works. But when you build it on a Makerbot, you can actually see it build up layer by layer. And so you can see all the different ways that water flows through it and oil flows through it to keep it cool and then to keep it lubricated. And it's cool to be able that companies like that are sharing so that we can be inspired.
That's awesome. Next question is from Josh Parolin. What are the future ways the 3D printer will be able to help those in underdeveloped regions of the world?
Yeah, so I think, the RoboHands project points again to prosthetics. And then, I think about, when you can think about like being on the International Space Station. It's kind of hard to get parts delivered. Similar to places in the world that are hard to get to. It would be, I think we'd have to solve the problem locally of electricity, but once you've got electricity, it could really, it's in-time manufacturing. And it's one of those things where, when you make something on a Makerbot, you're making it right there with the materials right there. It's not being shipped to you from across, the ocean on a boat and put on a train and then a truck and kept warm in a store. You just-in-time manufacturing on your desktop. That's cool on my desk, but it's even cooler in places where stuff isn't available.
Or like replacement parts. So you showed an example of a broken thing. Trying to get a replacement where it's tough, difficult.
There's like 20 different versions of stovetop knobs on Thingiverse. So if you lose one, you can just download and make another
one. The shower curtain hooks, right? Yeah. Next question from AARP Technology. How do you see 3D printing tech improving accessibility and quality of life for an aging population?
I sent my grandpa a Makerbot, and he's 87, and he just jumped right in and is like, showing all his neighbors how it works and getting everybody excited in his neighborhood. And I think that, I imagine that there's all sorts of things that would be, if I was old and couldn't like drive somewhere, it would be another way that I could just make the things that I need.
And it's also like a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And you could have a user group and get to have, the Makerbot would facilitate personal interaction between people, and a lot of elders are shut in and they have, they're lonely, and so if it would be a way to get people together, right?
Yeah, there's a, what's that? The which thing?
I think he says open source.
Yeah, so one of the things real quickly, old people, then open source. One of the cool one of our power users when we launched the Thingimatic was a guy down south who had a very large boat, a Lamborghini, and he's 87. He spent his life building laser systems. Like, I want to be that guy. And his obsession now is making things with his Makerbot and sharing them and bringing them into the world and sharing them with friends. With open source stuff, we really encourage people to share stuff, and we share as much as we can in terms of, because the more you can share, just like when you share your photography, when you share your videos, when you share things, it adds it's like a library for the world that everybody can use.
Next question from Lara Sarf. How can we help get, okay, this is a good one. How can we help get Makerbots in schools?
Well, probably the easiest thing to do would just be to get one and go there.
Right, just buy one and donate it to the school.
I think that we work with a group called Mouse, which is a super cool like nonprofit that teaches kids to be IT specialists in their schools, and we work with them and got them Makerbots to see what they would do with it, and it's so great for like STEM education, for science, technology, engineering, and math, for kids to be able to make what they want when they need it, and you've got like there's a whole. If you're into that, you should go to curriculum.makerbot.com, check it out, and there's all sorts of curriculum if you're a teacher to bring it into your classroom.
So curriculum.makerbot.com, okay. Oscar Gutierrez Jr. asks, do you think Makerbot will be part of a smart house? Like the enterprise, right? Is that what he's saying?
He must
Yes.
Thinking that, of
Yes.
course.
I think the answer to that is just yes. I mean, it's, I'm looking forward to like voice recognition where we can be like, old school tea Earl Grey hot. We can make the cup, we can't make the tea yet, but we'll get there.
Okay. Katie Bennett, when are we going to start seeing Makerbots at local copy stores, FedEx, Kinko's, to provide more access to all?
I think that's a great idea.
Next question. Glenn Smody, are all the materials stiff or are there softer materials?
Right now they're all stiff, but material science is a frustrating thing. We've tried lots of different materials, and you try it, it takes a lot of time, and then you're like, nope, doesn't work. So you'll see more materials come out as we find them and can bring them to people. We want to do that.
You said you experimented with chocolate, so that was problematic? What happened?
So our first machine was called the Cupcake because it could make cupcake-sized things. And we thought, well, since it's called the Cupcake, we should probably be able to ice cupcakes with the machine. Just seemed natural at the time. And so we put together an extruder that had a syringe. And it basically, instead of extruding plastic, it extruded anything you could put in the syringe, chocolate or silicone or Nutella worked really well.
And then it...
Yeah.
You,
and
so
then
you
eat
could
it.
do it.
Eat your mistakes.
So
Put the rest on a cake.
There was no market for that.
I'm sure there is a small market for that, like cupcake shops.
All right, let's see. Next question. Jose Guzman, has anyone tried to digitize a person yet?
So we've got a retail store in the city in Manhattan, and you can come on in, and we'll scan you. And then you can choose, we'll make you a copy of yourself, small, medium, or large, and
So
send it
you
off to
have.
you. Yeah, so that's actually really fun. I brought my daughter in and scanned her, and that was my gift to the grandparents.
So that's, I know you have a store, so for people who are watching, where is that?
It's on Mulberry Street, just north of Houston in NoHo.
Okay. Pernille Tranberg asks, let us hear your thoughts on copyright. What do you tell Lego?
So I'm a huge Lego maniac. So we don't want to mess with Lego if we can. We want to be friends with them. And I think when you make a Lego brick, you're looking at like 10 or 15 minutes per brick to make it. Maybe a little less, maybe 7 minutes. I haven't made one recently. So it's not like it's not the most efficient way to make Legos, but let's say you get your head scanned at the Makerbot store and you want to put your head on your latest Lego creation. That's where I think it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
And just like copyright stuff on Thingiverse, we occasionally get DMCA takedowns from copyright from people who think that copyright is being violated.
Okay. David Lee King says, what about
Oh, yeah.
Makerbots in libraries? Good idea?
Yes. Libraries are trying to figure out what to do now that we're all reading Kindles. And, and one of the things that they're coming up with is community centers where people make stuff together. So there's a bunch of library initiatives where they're getting funding to go and put laser cutters and Makerbots in libraries. And you can come in and basically rent time on them. There's also, I should also give a shout out to Tech Shop. There's an awesome tech shop in Austin. And they've got Makerbots. They've got, among tons of other tools, and it's a great place to go and get access.
That reminds me of the project you had in museums where art was scanned. So there's a, how did Makerbots and museums work together?
That was fun because we went to there's a program called 123D Catch, another 123D program, where you can scan things by taking photos. And we went to a museum and scanned all sorts of great works of art, and went with a bunch of artists, and then we promptly mashed them up and put different arts on different heads, and had a lot of fun with that.
Cool.
You can make a mini museum with your Makerbot.
Next question, Emily Rimland. Could 3D printing have a role in solving the issue of outsourcing U.S. jobs overseas? Well, Makerbot is an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, we make these things and we assemble them in Brooklyn, and we get as many things as we can kind of locally. And it's really great. I mean, manufacturing is not something, you know, when I was a kid, I had metal shop and wood shop, and kind of part of the idea was, you know, when you could grow up, you might work in a factory making things. And that went away with wood shops and metal shops. And now with Makerbots, you can see, you can see that there's a new avenue for people to be creative and enter the world of manufacturing. So we're seeing startups use Makerbots to jump in and do things.
Next question, Michael Senkow. Oh, are you hiring?
This is a great final question. Yes, we've got 50 jobs open right now. So, and I believe it's March 14th or 15th, we're having a job fair. Come see us. We are growing leaps and bounds, and we're looking for smart people to work with.
That's great. Okay, Bre Pettis, thank you very much. Awesome.
Thanks, Steve. Right on. Cool.